2024 has been a heck of a year for cinema. And it's that time of the year when I look back on everything I've seen, which in normal years I actually see about 125 new movies. This year didn't quite set the pace. I saw 110. Part of that was I'm making my own movie, River City Stories. So I'm going to give myself a little grace for not seeing quite all the movies that I wanted to this year. Nonetheless, honestly, every year seems to be a good year for cinema. It just depends on where you look. As always, there are the usual caveats. Number one, this is really my favorite films. It's not a best of list. If you like a movie, let me know in the comments. If you don't like these movies, just move along and find other recommendations. A note about release dates. There are lots of movies that will be up for Oscar consideration in a couple of months that have not played at all in the United States yet, or if they have been in a very tiny select few theaters for qualifying runs in Los Angeles and New York. I'm looking at you. All We Imagine Is Light, The Brutalist, Hard Truths, Oh Canada, The Nickel Boys. Come on, folks, give us these movies, even if we don't live in New York and LA. So, without further ado, let's go through numbers 30 through 21 in alphabetical order. Alice Rohrwacher's delightful La Chimera. James Mangold's Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown, aka your dad's favorite movie of 2024. Finnish director Aki Kaurismäki's newest warm bath film, Fallen Leaves. The Canadian existential slasher flick In a Violent Nature by Chris Nash. Late Night with the Devil, the Cairnes brothers' Demon on Late Night thriller. Luca Guadagnino's drunken love epic Queer. Tran and Hung's beautiful Taste of Things. Three Extraordinary Women, a beautiful documentary about three women, each grappling with childhood and intergenerational trauma, who tell their stories while climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I met the directors, Pearlette Ramos and Cionin Lorenzo, at the Center Film Festival this November, while I was there screening my own short film, Manifesto. They're making the rounds on the festival circuit while planning wider distribution. If you get a chance to see this film, please do. I'm breaking my own rule by putting it here even though it doesn't have wide distribution because I liked it that much. Jon M. Chu's candy-colored musical adaptation of Wicked. And Will and Harper, Josh Greenbaum's road trip documentary following Will Ferrell and Harper Steele. At number 20 is Edward Berger's Conclave, a tightly wound melodrama about the backdoor politicking that goes into selecting a new pope. I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical of this film. It's about as subtle as an airport paperback novel, but the performances and Berger's attention to detail won me over. Francis Ford Coppola spent decades developing Megalopolis, his sprawling utopian epic that pulls from ancient Roman history to tell a story about a visionary genius hobbled by the status quo. So basically Coppola's autobiography. It's deliriously unhinged, shout out Aubrey Plaza, and I loved it. From one struggling genius to another, Cord Jefferson's American fiction follows the travails of a literary novelist who adopts a stereotyped persona when his latest work fails to land. This film is stuffed to the brim with keen observations about race in America, but also tells a poignant story about getting old. Hirokazu Kore-Eda's latest film, Monster, is a beautiful meditation on the ways that fear can eat at the soul of both children and adults. Every time you think you understand what's happening, this film offers you a new perspective, and that is as important as ever in the world in which we live. Isabel Wilkerson's cast is one of the most important books of our time, but a 500-page exploration of intolerance and subjugation throughout history is hardly an obvious choice, the Hollywood treatment. Ava Duvernay nonetheless found a way to tell this story in origin, through the eyes of its author, played beautifully by Anjanou Ellis-Taylor. Fremont is a deceptively simple story about a lonely Afghan refugee. She served as a translator for the US military, brought to America and left largely to fend for herself. I was primed to like this story because I actually wrote about a similar incident in Atlantic City as a journalist. Nonetheless, director Babak Jalali doesn't allow his protagonist to wallow in misery. This film is as funny as it is bittersweet. Problemista is one of the great unsung films of 2024. It got a blink and you'll miss it limited release earlier this year, and then just disappeared, despite having a stacked cast that included Tilda Swinton, RZA, Greta Lee, and narration from Isabella Rossellini, who is having quite a year between this, La Chimera, and Conclave. Julio Torres, the writer, director, and star of Problemista, is a Jacques Tati level genius in the making. You heard it here first. Pascal Plante's Red Rooms joins the pantheon of great paranoid thrillers, a slow burn at the intersection of true crime and the internet, starting as a courtroom drama about a serial killer before turning its crosshairs on the rest of us, watching from the sidelines. Like the best art, Jesse Eisenberg found something universal in the specificity of a real pain story. We all know people like Benji and David, or else we exhibit some of their qualities as we move through the world. The film made me want to call my Benji and check on him. I did. Hundreds of Beavers is a blast. It's one of the most original movies I've seen this year, and if I'm being honest, an inspiration for what you can do with just a Panasonic GH5, my camera, and a couple crew members. Every year there's at least one film on this list that is a total surprise to me. This year it was visual artist Titus Kafar's Exhibiting Forgiveness. This semi-autobiographical story about an artist returning home hits some familiar beats along the way for sure, but it never slips into the realm of the cliché. Forgiveness is messy, and so is this film. What do Basho, Andrew Tate, and Yui Boll have in common? Well, they're all grist for the primal scream that is Romanian director Radu Jude's Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. In this film, a lowly production assistant shuttles across Bucharest interviewing people who've been maimed in workplace accidents for a corporate instructional video, while she herself makes satirical TikToks. That is possibly the most 2024 movie I can imagine, although it actually was made in 2023. All the vagaries of the release schedule. Pham Tien An's Inside the Yellow Cocoon Shell is a mix of humanist melodrama and magical realism, tracing one man's journey back home and the process of him figuring out what role faith will play in his life. It's simply a beautiful film, and more people should see it. So a cat, a dog, a capybara, a lemur, and a secretary bird walk into a bar. That sounds like the setup for a joke, but it's really the plot of the Latvian animated film Flow by Gints Zielbalodis, except they're all on a small boat amid an apocalyptic flood after all humans have disappeared from the picture. It is a surprisingly poignant film that will leave you kind of gutted. I loved it. You don't have to like tennis to love Luca Guadagnino's other film from this year, Challengers. It's a story of ambition, friendship, lust, jealousy, and ultimately, love. And it's a damn fine film from stem to stern. I walked out of the theater after watching Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, in a daze. Glazer ain't subtle, locking his audience in a theater to watch the quotidian routines of a Nazi family living within earshot of the Auschwitz gas chambers. Sometimes subtle is not what's called for. Speaking of unsubtle, I Saw the TV Glow announces its themes right from the outset, placing its young queer protagonist in gym class under a pink and blue parachute tent. Later, we're treated to the wonders of burning TVs and an angry Fred Durst. It's the absurd, beautiful fantasia I never knew I needed. I've been a fan of Sean Baker since 2015's Tangerine. Each of his films is a sneak attack. He bowls you over with frantic editing and dazzling imagery, only to melt your heart as you follow his characters on their cockeyed quests for love, money, or sexual gratification. And sometimes, as in Anora, all three. The substance, Coralie Fargett's body horror comedic drama, recalls the best work of everyone from Almodovar to Cronenberg to Hitchcock. But even those reference points can't possibly prepare you for this wild ride. Just go see it already. Have you ever watched the patterns of light and shadows created by swaying tree branches? That might just be me. Well, there's a Japanese word for that, komorebi, and it's a feeling that director Wim Wenders captures beautifully in Perfect Days, a film about the daily rhythms of life for a man who drives across Tokyo cleaning public toilets. The film itself is kind of a shadow play, revealing more about its protagonist and his world. It's the kind of film you sink into like a warm bath. I loved it. Well, that's it. Those are my favorite movies of 2024. I hope you go to your local theaters to see them if you can. If not, find them on streaming, rent them from your local library. Do whatever you have to see these movies, and reach out to me and let me know what you think.